I always recognize that these wonderful holidays where we honor and celebrate wonderful people in our lives are both joyous and, for many of us, are sad days. I lost my dad about 4 years ago, and I'm particularly feeling it. Like Linda, I don't know, there's something in the water or something, but particularly feeling it. Just, grateful for his presence in my life. And that was not always my experience. Or his, I'm pretty sure, that thing goes both ways. So, and it's been a wonderful thing that I've just grown to appreciate him so much more. And, they always say that the older we get, the smarter our parents get. It's an amazing thing. I love Linda's quote this morning. I wanted to speak this morning about this idea of the gift of change. And what I know is that we don't always welcome and recognize change as a gift. It seems to me there's two ways that change comes about. One, we go after it. We say, I'm ready to change something in my life. I'm ready to have life be different. I'm going to set a new goal, a new intention, a new something, and I'm going after change. And the other way that change happens in our life is that it's thrust upon us. Death, loss, divorce, all of the things that cause upheaval in our lives and cause us to reevaluate. And so often in the midst of change, we're not saying, oh, isn't this a wonderful gift? Some of us are using a much different vocabulary around what's happening. And yet what I know is that the very nature of who we are is that there is a part of us that is changeless and eternal and deathless. And that part of us is the spiritual dimension. The physical dimension of who we are is all about change. You may have noticed. And yet it's an interesting thing to me that when life is changing around us, what we often want to do is to hang on to form. We want to grasp to what was, in hopes that we'll create stability in our lives. And so it's ironic that we would go in search of the thing that is changing to say, oh, this will give me safety and security. So for many of us, the spiritual journey is all about learning to, as things are changing around us, to go within, to find that place of peace, that place of power, that place of joy, that place of harmony. So that whatever changes are taking place, we know that there is a place of safety and security. And it seems ironic, doesn't it? I often have this image of when we are in a process of change, whether it was self-imposed or imposed upon us, that we're sort of like we're on this trapeze, the trapeze artists that are swinging through the air, and you're swinging on your trapeze, and in order to go to the next place, you must let go of the old one, right? You must let go. Otherwise, you will have really long arms, So you're letting go, and you're kind of, I always have the same as like, okay, whose idea was this? And yet there's that process of letting go of what was in order that what might be can come into being. And so I imagine, I've not trapezed, and I'm not making any new commitments today. I'm still paying for my last commitment, by the way. But that place must be an amazing thing when you've let go of the old, and the new's not quite here, and you're 50 feet in the air, and everybody's watching, right? And isn't that how we feel in the midst of our change? I call it that place called the void. The void is when what was is no longer here, and what will be has not yet arrived. Do you know this place? Yes. And so it's not particularly comfortable. And yet it is the great spiritual practice, I think, to live in the void with grace and ease. I remember my friend Michael Beckwith, the Reverend Dr. Michael Bernard Beckwith now. He just used to be, Reverend Michael back in the day when I knew him. I remember in a retreat one time he said, it's all about, you've arrived when you're comfortable on the edge of uncertainty. And I find that to be true, that as I become more spiritually aware, more spiritually grounded, my identity is based on spirit and not on form, then when form is changing, it's like, wonder what's new. So it is no accident that we decided we'd have this series in the midst of being in the void. For those of you who don't know, we are in the process of manifesting our new building. And I say in the process because it's not here yet. And sometimes I think the universe is not listening up to my time frame and how I want it to be and when I want it to happen. So we're soon to have a building permit. Many of us came together a couple weeks ago and tore out carpet and tile and did all kinds of hard, laborious work. Not me. I was there holding the vision and the high consciousness that all that work might take place with grace and ease, and it did. It was great. It was really lovely. Let us be clear. And so we're in this place called The New's Not Here. The old is gone. We moved out of our old offices, and so we're in this place. And it occurs to me that this is a really crucial time for us to be conscious and aware. Because I watch as I move into my general contractor role, and I've checked. I went back and did some research on this, and nowhere in my letter of call does it say, shall be a general contractor. Went back into the School of Ministry. There was no class on general contracting for the ministry. And yet, here we are. And it's wonderful. I jest because I have amazing people all around me. But, it's this interesting thing that we're not where we were. We're not yet where we want to be. And so it occurs to me that we need to be really mindful that we don't move into that mindset that says, when we have the building, then we're something. You see, isn't that the illusion? The illusion is when I have the money, then I'll be wealthy. And what spiritual teachers would teach us is that you are wealthy, and money becomes evidence of a way of being, a state of consciousness. So it becomes a very imperative that we're mindful of where we are. It made me think about the story of Moses. Now I know you know Moses. I know this is not a hard and fast Bible group, but I know you know Moses, right? And for those who are new, I take lots of liberty with my Bible stories, so just to prepare you. There are ways of reading the Bible, many ways. I like the metaphysical, metaphorical concept of looking at these wonderful characters as states of consciousness. They call it metaphysical interpretation. And so in Moses, we have Moses the lawgiver. And we're very big on the law in this teaching. We believe that there's a law of mind that manifests according to our belief. So Moses has this wonderful position. I like Moses. I relate to Moses. There's that idea of things are thrust upon you or things you choose. I never in 100 million years would have imagined myself as minister. In fact, it was probably my level of resistance that made it happen. But, now I know people that were little children and said, oh, someday I will be a minister. To me, that was the last box left, right? And yet, here we are. So Moses, God comes to Moses and says, Moses, I want you to lead my people out of bondage. Moses says, I'm so sure you mean my brother Aaron. Look at him. He's tall, he's handsome, he's Mike, right, Rick? He's Surely you mean him. God's like, no, you. I want you. A lesson. We may see what's missing. God sees our potential. And so Moses agrees to this wonderful task. All you've got to do is round up all these people, all their wives, all their animals, and just cross that Red Sea in the middle of the night. No problem there. And so Moses takes on this joyful task of leading this group of people through the desert. Now, they end up in the desert for quite some time. I have my lady friends that tell me it's because he was a man and would not stop and ask for directions. I don't know if that's true, but anyways, they're there for a long time. Now, again, symbolically, that period of 40 is always a period of completion, always a period of transformation. So we know that the flood lasted 40 days. We know that Jesus went into the wilderness for 40 days. They wandered in the wilderness for 40 years. These are symbolically periods of time of completion. And so think about this. What happens, Moses takes this wonderful group of people. They get across the Red Sea. Moses is doing all kinds of cool things. He's turning rods into serpents. He's turning rocks into water. He's just doing this. And yet, still not enough, right? So one day Moses is called to go up and have this conversation with God on the mountaintop. God is going to reveal the law to Moses. And so he heads up the mountain to have this encounter with the divine. And he's not halfway up the mountain, and everybody's like, oh, let's have riotous living, right? You remember the story? The movie was great, right? This will not do. Let's create something in form. Let's have an idol. Let's gather all our gold, and we'll build a sacred idol that we can worship to the god Baal. Well, Moses comes back with his tablets, his gray hair, and he's been inspired and can't believe what has happened in just such a short amount of time. And finally, they all settle down and they finish the journey and they make it to the promised land. Now, here's the thing. If we were to look at this metaphysically or metaphorically, all of those characters are some part of ourselves. I don't know if you've ever noticed this, but sometimes we go in search of the divine. It's like, I'm going to go to the mountaintop. And even while we're away, some other part of our consciousness, you know there is many people that live in the committee called our mind, and they're going crazy. Like, oh, we got to do something. I got to find a false idol. I've got to find something that I can hold on to. I've got to find something real. I've got to have something powerful. But spiritual teaching would tell us that the power lies within us. The great Master Jesus over and over was teaching those who studied with him that there is a power within. He referred to it as the Father. And he said to us, if we would seek this power and this presence, then all those other things shall be added unto us. And yet, so often we want to be like the Israelites and let's create something real, you know? I mean, I have real problems. I'm this prayer thing, that's all good and fine, but I got real problems. I got money problems. Because we know how real money is, right? It's so fascinating. When we look to this story, it gives us a way out. And it says that we will seek this divine presence. We will live in accordance with the laws. And I'm not talking about the thou shalt nots. I'm talking about understanding that there are laws, spiritual laws at our work. And what we know about spiritual principle, it is no respecter of person. The law of gravity does not say, oh, you're fine. Don't worry about me today. Do whatever you want. While the rest of you do that, right? The law of gravity that's what's wonderful about the laws, the principles, is that they are equal opportunity employers. And so our power comes from understanding that we have this law at our disposal. that the way we think, what we imagine, how we talk, our very structure of our belief system is the determinant about our quality of life. And so Moses comes back down, having been inspired, having had an encounter with the divine, and says, settle down, put all those false idols away. In fact, I even got a commandment for that. Commandments were like the app of his time, I'm thinking, right? I got an app for, idols of Baal, Don't do that. Let us refocus and let us continue our journey into the promised land. And so when we're in that place called the void, there are some helpful hints that will help us get through it. That place before, that which we have imagined, that which we have, and for very few of us, you may have noticed, for very few of us do we just instantly manifest. Now there are people, Jesus appears to be one of them, there's Sai Baba and some others that seem to be able to just, for the rest of us, there's this slow process called manifestation. We have the idea well before we have the experience. And so what to do when we're in the void? One, we should recognize that we need to release. We need to let go. Remember Michael also saying that about 90% of our spiritual growth takes place in letting go. Letting go of our old image. Letting go of how we think it should be. Or even how we demand it to be. Show you, I'll demand it to be this way. How's that working? Right? Letting go of our old idea of self. Letting go of our old idea of others. I was sharing that my dad and I never quite worked out how to be buddies. We loved each other. He loved me. I loved him. We worked together for a number of years, which was wonderful. But we never quite had that Hallmark card kind of relationship. And yet, over the years, we had a very healthy respect for each other. And part of that happened because I finally let go of being mad at him for not being who I thought he should have been, right? He should have been this. My dad had a model for fatherhood, which is you are a good provider, and he was a great provider. The model has changed. I love what I see. I love that our youth ministry is currently headed by a dad. I love that the men that I see in our congregation believe that fatherhood is more than just being some presence, but are actively engaged. I love that. That I feel so blessed that things have changed. And so it really is much more of a shared relationship of mother and father and family and community and all of that of how do we raise our little ones. So when my allowing him to be who he was, him allowing me to be who I was, then there was a real relationship. You know what I'm talking about? I think how often are we in relationship with people that aren't there? Right? Oh yeah, I see you, but I'm going to hold the image of who you were 20 years ago. Remember? Remember the slight you gave me? That's what I'm going to see when I see you. Isn't that healthy? Right? So releasing and letting go and allowing, letting go of the past, letting go of what was, allows us to become present for what is. We should also recognize that anytime change happens, there is a grieving process. Even when it's change we want, even when it's change we've instituted. And so I find that there's a wonderful process. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross is sort of credited with understanding the stages of grief. And we start off in denial. I've wanted the denial to be a strategy for making my life work. Not such a good one. There's better ones. This isn't happening. There's a great place to start. This isn't happening. It ain't real, right? Great thing about metaphysics, you can use metaphysical principles to say, this ain't real. And so sometimes there's profound spiritual truth, and then sometimes it's just plain old denial. So you move beyond that. You start feeling what's happening, and maybe anger happens, and then bargaining happens, and finally, as we move through the process, we come to acceptance of what is. Now, I say, if we want to really live well, we should grieve well. We should honor the process. We should allow those feelings. They're just feelings. Sometimes I find in metaphysics, we're like, oh, I shouldn't feel like that. I'm so evolved. It's like, just feel it. It's just a feeling. It's just a thought. It's just a feeling. And in fact, it turns out, you may have noticed this, that feelings that are stuffed don't really go away. In fact, they have a way of emerging at the least appropriate time. Usually over Thanksgiving dinner. Don't know why that is, but you know. I didn't make the rules, I'm just sharing, right? So when we allow that feeling, when we allow ourselves to grieve through that process till we can be angry and do whatever we need to do, and then we go, this is what is. Now what? And then what I believe is that our practice is the most important thing. That the practice, the spiritual practice in the midst of the void. You see, one of the great things about this is that when all of the ways of form are not present, you better figure out a higher power or something. Something that you can rely on. And the great teachers of faith through the ages have said there is a power, there is a presence that can be relied on. And so we learn to practice. We learn to come back to the vision that we hold. Even though it is not apparent, it does not mean it's not real. And so we hold to the vision of possibility. If we don't hold to the vision, the temptation is to run back. So, I better throw together a quick idol here. Something I can worship, right? Or we hold the vision and we keep ourselves moving forward. We do our spiritual work. We know that there's a presence and a power that is all around us and within us that is guiding us through to the promised land. That's why I became very aware that it was very important for us that we not move into a mindset that says, when we get in the building, then we'll be a church. We are a church today. We are a spiritual community here, now, and always. It'll be lovely, so lovely, universe, if you're listening, so lovely to be in our building. And apparently it will take place in divine right order and not necessarily according to my plan. But it will happen. I know that as much as I know anything, because we have co-created something. So it's a wonderful thing for us to remember that even in the midst of what appears to not be working, that is where the work needs to be done. Ernest Holmes once said that to abandon truth in the midst of seeming discord is to have never known the truth. You see, sometimes we want to be spiritual practicers, that fair weather spiritual practicers, right? Practicing, oh, everything's good, okay. Then what happens when it's not so good? That's where the real work is done. That's where the real work is done. So what I know is that we are all on this journey. There are going to be good times. There are going to be not good times. There's going to be good times again and not good. I mean, all of life is changing. And so it makes sense to me that we learn to rest and rely on that divine presence within, that we do our spiritual work, that we make those deposits, if you will, into the spiritual bank account so that when the time comes and we need to draw on our savings, we have something there. Change is a gift. If everything just stayed the same, if people never died, we would just become so rigid, wouldn't we? We just keep doing the same thing every day, right? But because change happens, it keeps us adapting. The great gift that I see of being in this time of in-between is it's allowing us to rethink what we've done, how we've done it. Does it still make sense? Or is there a new possibility emerging? So there's always the gift taking place, even when it's not readily apparent. I would have you know that the void is powerful. It's a powerful place to be. I know we'd rather be in the promised land. Or heck, sometimes we go, well, Egypt wasn't so bad. We had food, we had the locusts, those were a pain. But, the rest of it wasn't so bad. And so we wander in the wilderness, which is that time of completion, bringing forth the new possibility. And so wherever you are on this journey, whether you are in the desert, whether you're experiencing the promised land, just know that you are loved and supported in being fully who you are. This is a spiritual community that celebrates you and who you're becoming. Let us pray. As we simply breathe into this moment, honoring and recognizing that infinite and divine presence, the one life, always present, always available. We know that we did not create life, but rather life created us. And therefore, we are one with the one life, the one mind, the one power. So we open our hearts and our minds this day to be present and available for this infinite loving presence. We're knowing right here and right now that this divine intelligence is always seeking its highest self-expression. We open our hearts and our minds to this divine wisdom and to this perfect love. And we speak the word of truth this day, knowing that we are created in the image of wholeness, and that wholeness reveals itself as health and well-being and vitality. We speak the word of truth this day, knowing that we are created in the image of abundance, and that our lives flow and unfold perfectly. Joyously we give, joyously we receive of this divine bounty. We recognize and know that we are created in the image of divine love. And we know that divine love heals and blesses and transforms all that has been. And so I'm simply accepting for each of us gathered here the many blessings of life unfolding through us. I recognize and know that there is a divine prototype, a divine pattern seeking its emergence through our life and through our affairs. And I am knowing that it unfolds joyously, lovingly, perfectly right here and right now. And so I give thanks for these blessings. And as we give thanks for the blessings, we extend blessings. We bless this spiritual community, this Center for Spiritual Living, knowing that we are divinely guided, divinely prospered, that our work in the world is healing and transformative. We extend a blessing to our brothers and sisters around the planet this day. We extend a blessing to the planet itself with all of her creatures and all of her inhabitants. We're accepting and knowing a planet at peace and a world that works for everyone. And as always, we speak the word of truth, blessing all priests, rabbis, ministers, teachers of every faith. For we know there are many pathways to the divine. And so we honor and celebrate spiritual unfoldment, spiritual wisdom being revealed in the world. How good it is to know this truth. And so in joy and gratitude, then, I'm simply giving thanks, allowing this truth to be made manifest through the law of mind, in perfect timing and in divine right order. It is good. And so together we say, and so it is.